Welcome. You are listening to the Nonprofit Leaders Network podcast, episode 5. Today, we're talking with Josh Brooks, Executive Director of Enduring Charity Foundation.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Leaders Network podcast, where your host, KIRSTEN Bullock, interviews nonprofit CEOs and executive directors to share what's working. This podcast is produced every 2 weeks, and show notes are found at www.nonprofitleadersnetwork.com. Come back often, and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. Any links we talk about will be listed in the show notes. Now, let's get on with the show.
Thank you, Josh, for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Kirsten?
Great. Fabulous. Thanks for joining me today. Josh Brooks is a newcomer to the nonprofit world who saw a need and started his own nonprofit called the Enduring Charity Foundation. Would you mind sharing with us, Josh, really quickly what Enduring Charity does?
Absolutely. So the Enduring Charity Foundation helps individuals, for-profit businesses, and other nonprofit organizations establish an enduring source of financial support for those charities that they care about. And the way that we do that, it's really a 3-step process. The interested party that wants to create an endowment picks a name, they name the endowment, they select the supported charities, and typically for our nonprofit organizations, they select themselves as the supported charity. And then we go about endowing an initial contribution of money or non-monetary property, and then a fundraising campaign, and then we restrict that money, invest it, and the proceeds of that money goes to support those selected charities year in and year out forever.
Great. That sounds like a pretty comprehensive service.
Yeah, I think it's a good solution for individuals who want to be philanthropic and get out of the hand-to-mouth donations cycle. It's a good way for those for-profit businesses that aren't big enough to have their own foundations to participate in some sort of comprehensive giving program. And it's also a great way for our brother and sister nonprofit organizations to enjoy all the benefits of an endowment without having all the administrative requirements as well.
Right. Thanks, Josh. Now, you can read his full bio on the podcast page at www.nonprofitleadersnetwork.com, but here's just a few of the highlights that Josh shared with me. Josh is an active duty aviation officer in the U.S. Army. He has more than 16 years of service. He has a deep sense of gratitude for all the blessings in his life, and this, combined with his desire to get involved in philanthropy, led him to found Enduring Charity Foundation. Josh intends to apply those values that he learned in the Army, which are duty, integrity, and selfless service, in leading the Enduring Charity Foundation. So we'll go ahead and just jump into the questions. How did you first recognize that there was a need for this type of service, and what led you to move forward and start this group? That must have been a pretty big jump for you.
It was, and it wasn't. I have been looking for a way to identify what I'm going to do for my second career. So I've got about 3 to 6 years left in the Army, and I'm thinking about what the second half of my working life looks like. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is my military service. And the key word there is service. So I thought to myself, how can I create or design a career, a second career that was service-oriented? And what can I do now to get the ball rolling so that when I step out of the military in 3 to 6 years, I'm ready to make that transition? At the same time I was sort of going through this cycle of thinking and development, I was exposed at Georgia State University to the creation of an endowment for our Army ROTC program. So I got to see how the nuts and bolts of an endowment worked. And then I talked with my father, and we turned my mother's Memorial Scholarship Fund, which was a hand-to-mouth account, money in and money out. We turned that into an endowment. So I had all of this experience of endowments and philanthropy staring me in the face. I'm thinking about what service-oriented career I can have after life in the military, and I put 2 plus 2 together, and the idea was I need to be a philanthropist. And then we went forward and talked about, well, should we start an endowment? But ultimately we arrived on the idea of starting a foundation that would consist of a portfolio of endowments, because the members of the board, as we started the foundation, myself, Julie, Wayne, and Dave, we had different charitable interests. So we each needed our own endowment, but also creating a portfolio of endowments allows other individuals, other for-profit businesses, and other nonprofit organizations to participate. So that's kind of how we got there.
Okay, great. And I love how you say you wanted to be a philanthropist, because I think some people are really intimidated by that term. They think you have to have a lot of money, or they feel like it has to be something more than what they are. And really, truly, anybody can be a philanthropist. Do you find yourself running into people who think about that term differently, or are people fairly open to it?
Well, I think what you said, there are some definite stereotypes or particular connotations associated with that word. But in my opinion, the word philanthropist describes a state of mind. It doesn't matter how much money you have. What matters is you're a person that wants to be of service, you're a person that's giving. But I also think philanthropists are a little savvy. They have a little bit of business acumen. And therein is my critique of the current way that charity works. We give $1, the dollar gets spent this year, next year they need another dollar. A philanthropist understands that enduring profit and enduring source of support, and therefore they gravitate toward the endowment style of philanthropy. So in some ways, I'm on a mission to convert donors into philanthropists.
Great. Now, in starting an organization, I know we have some listeners who might just be starting their organization or really early on, and I'm sure they're curious how you got your first gifts. So how did you identify the first people who are going to establish an endowment with Enduring Charity Foundation?
Well, the first group of people that we went to was the board. Julie and I established an endowment. Dave and his wife Debbie established an endowment, and then Wayne and his wife Lanie established an endowment. So the board, put their money where their mouth is. I also had a couple of close associates who wanted to be philanthropic, and I described this vision to them, and they were interested as well. One was an individual who wanted to participate, and then the other one was a small businesswoman who was looking for a way to achieve a tax break. And oh, by the way, if she can help somebody through charity, that would be cool too. The first circle of our network was really where we went first to establish those initial gains.
Great. Where are you reaching out to now that you've gone through to the inner circle, the people who know you, those folks? What's your next step?
Our next step, obviously, we're still working the inner circle for recurring contributions, which, now that we've got initial endowments started, one of the very important things that we have to do with those is good stewardship to continue to grow them. But the next step that we've taken is reaching out to the community at large through LinkedIn, through blogging, through Facebook, and some of the other social media outlets to create awareness. So now we're actually being contacted by individuals outside of our own network who've come across the website and asked questions, or people who I've made connections with on LinkedIn, and they said, you know what, this is something we need to talk about, or maybe we can see if we can work together. So we really kind of went from first circle to everybody. And I'm not sure that's the logic that I would recommend that your audience follow, Kirsten, but it works for us. Okay, great. And one thing that you said, that you recognize the importance of good stewardship, I think that's something that what does that mean to you? What types of things do you do to ensure that you're practicing good stewardship? I forget what book that I read it in, but they said the 10 touches a year. So, we make a phone call to each of our endowment founders quarterly, and we send happy holiday cards. We've sent Christmas cards. We sent 4th of July cards, which no one else does, so that kind of gets a little bit of extra attention. We'll probably send Veterans Day cards out because a large part of our group so far is military folks. We are doing a semi-annual newsletter, and then we've got the end of the year campaign, which includes, the thank-a-thon, a thank you phone call, a thank you letter, an annual report on how the foundation's performing, and then, of course, toward the end of the holiday season, the annual solicitation. So if you are a founder of and I'm sorry, last thing, we also do an annual gift, right? A paperweight or a keychain or something like that. So if you're an endowment founder, you hear from the Enduring Charity Foundation at least 10 times a year. And if you're a donor, you get touched by the Enduring Charity Foundation probably right at 10 times a year.
That is fabulous. And it's great that you've thought that through so early in the life cycle of your organization, since right now you're, a year old?
Just over a year.
Okay. Congratulations on meeting that first big milestone. So what do you see as your greatest success for this first year that you've just finished?
The great success for the first year is that we sort of achieved and then went beyond our initial goals. So the way that I describe the first year to people is it happened in thirds. The first third was establishing the organization, right? Establishing the foundation, getting our organization incorporated in Georgia as a nonprofit, getting the bank accounts up, reading all the different regulations and laws that you need to be aware of. The second third was getting the tax-exempt status, the 501c3 from the IRS, which typically takes a lot longer, but it took us a short 4 months to do, from the time we started the application to the time the IRS granted us 501c3 status. And then finally, the last third was we got 7 endowments established with $25,000 endowed. So our first year, we got established, we obtained 501c3 status, and we got $25,000 endowed, which will generate $1,000 or so of support to those designated charities year in and year out forever. So a pretty darn good first year.
Right. You've been moving gangbusters, and this is while you've been working full-time with your day job, right? Yeah.
Right.
So you've been busy.
Well, and this is how I know I found the right thing for my second career, is because my eyes open before the alarm clock goes off. It's a joy to work on the foundation in the evenings, in the early mornings, and on the weekends. It's not a burden. So I know that I've found what I was looking for.
That's great. And for this first 12 months as well, have you had any big learning opportunities, something that you might do differently next time or recommend that others do differently?
Absolutely. There's always going to be an element of discovered learning, and that's a good thing most of the time. The challenge occurs when you come across somebody who maybe is unscrupulous or perhaps even worse, is interested more in collecting a fee than they are helping the organization move forward. And we encountered a person that advertised themselves as a nonprofit consultant / CPA, and wanted to charge us $200 an hour to help us put together our 501c3 application. And after the first few engagements, I realized that either I really, really knew a lot, which isn't the case, or this person was taking their time to pad their hours to increase their fee. And, we had to kind of work through that. And then the following doubt and anxiety and fear that maybe we were in over our head. So I would I would urge your audience to, stay motivated, stay positive, especially in the face of those setbacks, but also just take a real good look at who you're working with and ask them to show you recent successes they've had and ask them to provide you references and just do some real good diligence if you're going to work with people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Any specific questions that you think might be good to ask in addition to those recent successes and looking for recommendations?
I would ask, when was the last time you successfully obtained approval for one of your clients from the IRS for 501c3? I mean, mm-hmm. the gentleman that we finally ended up going with, when I got him on the phone and spoke with him, he said, I've done more than 1,500 of these. And then after he spent some time asking me about what I wanted to do and what we thought we were trying to do, he said, yep, that sounds good. It sounds like your priorities are in the right place. It sounds like a pretty simple design. I'm confident that I can help you get this through the IRS. I've done 1,500 applications. I have a 100% success rate. It'll cost this much. It'll be not a dime more. It'll take this long, as long as you get the paperwork back in a timely manner from the time we start to the time we submit it, and after that, it's up to the IRS. I mean, and he was that certain. And I think if people come back and, well, it depends, and it varies for everybody. Yeah, but you should be able to give me an average. You should be able to give me some firm idea of how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take, or you haven't done it enough to maybe be the person that I want to work with.
Right. And so it sounds like for you it was really good to go with someone who was an expert in the field, who knew what he was doing, was able to guide you through it, as opposed to using a volunteer who may not be familiar with the nonprofit process. Do you think it was worth it to pay for it?
I do. A lot of people ask me this question because we are running on a shoestring budget. Julie and I have loaned the foundation. Now we've loaned them $10,000 now, and the gentleman we worked with wanted $2,500, and that's 25% of our startup capital. But looking back, I would spend that money all over again. It was we found the right person. It was the perfect remedy to the concern and fear and anxiety we had. And I endorse this gentleman, and I recommend him to people all the time. And
you can feel free to share his name if you like, and then I can include it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, his name is David Marmon, and he's out in New Mexico, and his website is 501c3go.com. And just the nicest guy, and his staff is very responsive, and the questionnaire that he has is easy to use, and he will get on the phone and talk with you. And if your priorities aren't in the right place, that is, if you want to use the 501c3 structure more for personal gain than you do its intended purpose, he will probably politely bow out. But if you are truly trying to do good in the world, he'll pick you up wherever you are in the process. If you are in the middle of negotiating with the IRS, if you're right at the beginning of the 501c3 process, if you haven't even incorporated yet, he can help you with wherever you want to start.
Great, thank you. And Josh, do you have any closing words to maybe some words of encouragement for people who are early on in this process?
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that we can choose our own careers in this great country, those people who feel called to go into philanthropy are a special kind of person. And sometimes it's tough, sometimes it's challenging, but there's a network out there. There's a network of philanthropic individuals on LinkedIn, on the different blog sites. Folks can reach out to me. I'm available at josh@enduringcharity.org. When you hit an obstacle, when you come upon a struggle, you're not the first person to have encountered that challenge. Someone else has had that challenge and has overcome it. So all you have to do is find that person, and engage in professional development and fellowship with them. And not only do you get a solution to your problem, but you move your organization forward and you probably end up making a new friend and contact.
Great. And I guess that's how we met too, isn't it, Josh? Through LinkedIn.
I think it was either LinkedIn or Twitter, and, just admiring each other's work on social media led to a telephone conversation. I read that chapter that you wrote in the fundraising handbook, and just the respect has continued to grow. And now we're talking on podcasts, and I think this is how it is supposed to work.
Absolutely, meeting people, connecting, supporting, and encouraging each other. So thank you very much, Josh, for joining me today, and thanks to all the listeners for being here and for your commitment to improving the community. Together, we can definitely make the world a better place.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kirsten. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Nonprofit Leaders Network podcast with Kirsten Bullock. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, nonprofitleadersnetwork.com, to your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. Join us next time for another edition of the Nonprofit Leaders Network podcast.